I love this chart. This line shows the number of units in medium-density buildings permitted each year in Edmonton. That dramatic jump at the end? That's when the city's big housing reform came online, legalizing small-scale density, townhouses and multiplexes up to 8 units, across most of the city. It was one of the best housing reform efforts on the continent. It was a model for other suburban cities, and it got results. For the first time ever, 5 to 8 unit buildings added more housing than single-family builds, at least in permits. Not all have been completed yet. Edmonton shows us clearly. Design your policy right in small-scale infill development in established neighborhoods, close to jobs and transit, can be a major source of new housing. But it can also ignite a backlash, some really intense backlash.
Frustration with infill reaching new heights in Edmonton's Dovercourt neighborhood, with one neighbor saying she's ready to chain herself to a tree to stop development on this house behind me.
I told you it was intense, and it's causing the city to consider rolling back some of these reforms. As a prairie city with lots of room to expand and a booming population after World War II, Edmonton naturally sprawled outwards with more and more suburbs. Why not? Problems from traffic to difficulty providing services made them rethink the model.
Snow clearing is on a lot of people's minds these days. I used to live in Montreal. Many people out east might not know that we don't clear local roads. We aim to maintain it down to a snowpack, and only after we've cleared all the arterial roads.
On major roadways, the snow is cleared, but close to home, cars struggle through massive ruts and deep packed snow.
So people are getting stuck, and that's because we have so many more roads than Montreal, but much less people. Maintaining services, keeping taxes low, growing inwards instead of outwards has been part of the conversation for a long time.
Over the 2010s, Edmonton made their housing rules more flexible, allowing, for example, skinny homes on smaller lots like this, with backyard suites in the back as well. But then the biggest change was a complete overhaul of their zoning code.
And this was a complete rewrite from scratch of the zoning bylaw, consolidated a bunch of zones into really just a handful of them. So simplified down a humongous document that had become unwieldy to modernize it, introduce this RS zone, the small-scale residential zone that covers most of Edmonton's established neighborhoods, mature neighborhoods. And this new RS zone allowed up to 8 units per lot, depending on the lot size, as well as allowing them in a row house configuration, which was something that was not allowed before.
These small single-family homes got converted into 2 8-plexes, from 2 homes to 16, from 1 bungalow to 6 homes. By the way, thanks to multiple people at Grow Together Edmonton for this recent footage. When I was in Edmonton, I saw earlier projects that were allowed only after a rezoning request. These projects here were allowed by default with no fight, under the recent zoning overhaul. Many other cities have done token reforms to get headlines saying they're acting on housing, but then they include rules to make new developments hard to build in practice.
The policy from the very beginning was designed for feasibility. It had the provisions that allowed these to actually be built on most of Edmonton's standard lots. Lots of credit to administration for that.
Edmonton has a pretty successful LRT system for a mid-sized suburban city. While these infill projects are allowed in most of the city, developers are showing a really clear preference for areas that are close to transit, because lots of people want to live there. This 8-unit building, which replaced a single-family home, is a 12-minute walk or 3-minute bike ride to the South Campus LRT station, which is then a 15-minute ride to downtown.
And Jura Developments is building multifamily housing in the West. Business is up 300% since 2023. And they say 70% of the housing they're building is along the route of the future Valley Line West LRT.
In 2025, half of the permits for 5 to 8-unit buildings were within 800 meters of an LRT station, existing or planned. That should be an easy walk, 15 minutes at most. And almost all were within 2 kilometers of the LRT, which should be an easy bike or a bus. But as I mentioned, not everyone is happy with the change.
There's like a sinking pit in my stomach, to be honest. Like, this is our home, and now we have downtown coming to a neighborhood.
What really genuinely hurts me inside is seeing housing reform become a culture war issue. Columnist Lauren Gunter is one of the biggest critics of Edmonton's reforms.
8-unit developments.
Deriding it as progressive and lefty to cut red tape and burdensome regulation around housing. He actually describes it as making shopping decisions for you when the government stops mandating arbitrary amounts of parking and allows developers to make their own judgments about how much to build based on demand. They want a crowded, collectivist eco-city of the future, and damn it, that's what they're gonna foist on the rest of us, whether we like it or not. Hey, wait a second. I live in that crowded, collectivist eco-city of the future, with 3-story apartments everywhere. It's called a neighborhood of Montreal built 100 years ago. Who among your friends is going to come for a visit anyway, if they have to park a block and a half away? A block and a half? If your friends won't walk 5 minutes from their car to see you, I question how strong that friendship is. How did the West Edmonton Mall get approved? Most shoppers are walking more than 5 minutes from their car to the store, especially if they're going to multiple stores. Another group is Edmonton Neighborhoods United. On one page, they complain about how new infill development brings down property values. $34,000 lost per nearby home, they claim. But another page says it's a myth that this reform will make housing more affordable. There's no evidence that supports upzoning lowering housing prices. Similar policies in other cities have driven up land values, leading to more luxury builds, not affordable homes. So new infill development is damaging and undesirable. It harms the neighborhood and brings down property values. But it also drives up land values and is too luxury. What we really need is more affordable housing. I've seen this before. Groups like this throw whatever they can at the wall to see what sticks, and no one really notices or calls them out on it. This backlash has led to backtracking.
A package of changes being brought to a mega public hearing in July of 2025.
Maximum length of infill buildings shrunk by 5 meters. They must be further from the property line, adding space between buildings. They're allowed only 2 side entrances, and the facade facing the street needs to look more like a house.
All of those would definitely be detrimental to housing, but as the numbers show, we can live with this and still produce more homes. The biggest and most destructive change was proposed by a councillor who made a motion to reduce the maximum number of units, the hard cap on units, from 8 to 6 on interior lots. And this was something that the builders modeled and said would be completely destructive to housing supply.
That one didn't get passed because an anti-infill councillor was away on vacation. Seriously. But now it's back. February 10th, 2026. Council is again considering dropping the number of homes allowed from 8 to 6 on each lot. That would apply mid-block, meaning non-corner lots. Developers do want to build 8-unit buildings. It's actually the most common within this 5 to 8 category. I don't think everyone appreciates the consequences of reducing the number of units. If you want to add 1,000 net new housing units using 8plexes, demolishing one single-family home for each new building, you need to demolish 143 single-family homes. If you want the same net new housing supply using 6plexes, you need to demolish 200 single-family homes. 57 more. What does that mean? That's more construction sites needed to get the same amount of new housing. That's more old buildings being demolished to get the same amount of new housing. That's fewer single-family homes available for those who want them. That's more money developers have to spend buying and demolishing properties. If you want to add 1,000 net new housing units using 4plexes, you'd need to demolish 334 single-family homes. If you want to reduce the number of construction sites and demolitions, you should want to get more housing, more new units from each one. What frustrates me in this debate is that I hear so often from people who say they don't want towers, they don't want high-rises. But this whole fight It's about 3-story buildings. This city found a way to add a bunch of housing using 3-story buildings. And still, it's extremely controversial. And people fought it hard. It's getting slowly whittled away. To be honest, even if these changes go through, Edmonton's housing policy will still be among the better ones on the continent, if you want to look at it relative to other places. But it is sad to see such an ambitious pro-housing agenda that other places are inspired by get cut down from so many angles like this. It feels like it could be death by 1,000 cuts, because who says the opponents will be satisfied by this? Maybe this will just embolden them to demand even more. If you live in Edmonton, you have until January 29th, 2026 to share your feedback directly to the city. Thanks to Grow Together Edmonton for support on this video, both data and footage. Follow them if you care about housing and the future of Edmonton. Thanks for watching through to the end of the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and a special thanks to our supporters on Patreon.